We have grown accustomed to seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger on screen as an unstoppable force. Chiseled muscles seemingly carved from stone, the cold stare of the Terminator, and the indomitable presence of Predator. For decades he has stood as the ultimate symbol of ambition and power, the man the world believed could achieve absolutely anything. But have you ever wondered, when the spotlight fades, when the roar of the crowd falls silent, and when the flesh of the superhero can no longer resist the relentless passage of time, what truly remains? At the age of 78, Arnold is facing his greatest, quietest, and perhaps most deeply human challenge. It is no longer a battle fought on the silver screen, but a battle to learn how to live as an ordinary man. Amid the scars of glory and the fragments of the past, what is the real person beneath that seemingly immortal exterior truly going through? Let us turn the final chapter of a legend, where fame gives way to life's simplest truths, and where the unvarnished reality of a lifelong conqueror is finally revealed. To truly understand Arnold's relentless drive to reach the very top, we must travel back to the remote Austrian village of Thal in 1947. It was a world left devastated in the aftermath of war, where Arnold's childhood was not painted in the bright colors of dreams, but in the grey shades of hardship. No electricity, no running water, and harsh Austrian winters whose bitter cold crept through every crack in the aging wooden walls. Yet the freezing winds outside were nothing compared to the emotional coldness inside his own home. His father, Gustav Schwarzenegger, a police chief with a deeply militaristic mindset, ran the household like a miniature military unit. To Gustav, affection was a luxury, while discipline was a creed. He did not teach through embraces, but through relentless severity, determined to mold his sons according to his own will. Most painful of all, Arnold always felt like an outsider in that small house. Gustav openly favored his older brother, Meinhard, offering him pride, warmth, and approval, while Arnold remained in the shadows, overlooked and forgotten. Every meal, every curt remark from his father cut into the young boy's fragile self-esteem. He longed to be noticed, to be accepted, to hear just a single word of praise, but all he received was cold indifference. Living under such control and emotional hardship, Arnold learned a harsh lesson early in life. Weakness was simply not allowed to exist. Feeling abandoned, constantly struggling beneath his father's overwhelming presence and the family's favoritism, he gradually forged a fiercely rebellious spirit within himself. He did not cry, nor did he complain. Instead, he began building an unbreakable inner world. That pain of rejection became his first source of fuel, bitter, intense, and driven by an overwhelming desire to prove himself. It pushed him to escape Thal, to leave Austria behind, and to show both his father and the world that the forgotten little boy deserved to stand at the very summit of success. As his longing for recognition grew into an obsession, Arnold found the defining path of his life in a rundown weightlifting club in Graz. It was not a modern gym filled with polished mirrors, but an old basement heavy with the smell of sweat and rusted iron. Yet it was there, the first time he gripped those cold steel barbells, that he realized he had discovered the fairest language in the world. To Arnold, the language of iron was liberation. In his father's world, people changed, affection came with conditions, and criticism was often unfair. Iron was different. Iron knew nothing of favourites or rejection. £200 would always remain £200, no matter who you were, what accent you spoke with, or which remote village you came from. Iron could not deceive, nor could it show favouritism. It simply waited in silence and responded to effort. Give it everything you had, and it rewarded you with strength. Treat it carelessly, and it defeated you without hesitation. Within that heavy metallic atmosphere, Arnold began constructing an unshakable psychological fortress. He did not lift weights merely to transform his physique, but to forge an invisible suit of armor. Every time he forced another heavy barbell overhead, it felt as though he were pushing away the shame and ridicule that had haunted his past. He came to understand that if he could control his body, and if he could master iron, then he could master his own life. That relentless training transformed a skinny, wounded young man into a true warrior. He built unwavering confidence, a mental shield so strong that no criticism from his father could penetrate it, and no obstacle placed in his path could force him to surrender. The gym was far more than a place to build muscle. It became a sanctuary where he rebuilt himself from the fragments of pain and began the journey towards becoming a legend the world would one day have no choice but to admire. When Arnold arrived in the United States in 1968, his dream was not welcomed with open arms, but with skeptical glances and dismissive disbelief. In the glamorous heart of the film industry, where beauty was defined by chiseled faces and smooth, expressive voices, Arnold appeared like a stranger from another world. With an enormous physique that seemed almost unreal, muscles carved like granite and a thick Austrian accent, filmmakers regarded him as an oddity, a fascinating curiosity rather than a genuine actor. The painful chapter known as Hercules in New York marked the darkest period of his early acting career. Those behind the film made little effort to respect his determination. They considered his Austrian accent far too strong, erased his real voice entirely, and replaced it with a dubbed performance that stripped his character of authenticity and emotion. Even more painfully, they took away the surname his father had given him, a name that, despite all its painful memories, remained part of his identity, removing Schwarzenegger from the promotional posters and replacing it with a cheap, commercially appealing name, Arnold Strong. Imagine a man who spent his entire youth using the strength of iron to prove his worth, only to be turned by Hollywood into little more than a muscle man sideshow. They mocked him during auditions, dismissing him as an awkward giant with poor English. Every rejection, every smirk from producers who looked at his physique as though he were some kind of curiosity, struck directly at his self-respect. Yet it was at the very lowest point of that humiliation that the spirit of the Iron Warrior rose stronger than ever. Instead of collapsing under the insults, Arnold chose silence and perseverance. He treated every minor role, every rejection, and every ounce of contempt thrown his way as another impossibly heavy weight to lift. He did not answer with words, because he knew his voice was not yet convincing enough, but with persistence. He accepted roles that others looked down upon, quietly observed, learned the craft of acting, mastered the language, and trained with relentless intensity, even when the cameras were not rolling. He transformed humiliation into fuel, using rejection as leverage to build an extraordinary inner strength, waiting patiently for the day when those who had laughed at him would be forced to bow before the very name they had once tried to erase. When fate finally smiled upon him, Arnold did not merely enter Hollywood. He conquered it in the most overwhelming, uncompromising, and spectacular fashion imaginable. From being dismissed as an outsider with a strange accent, he rose to become one of the world's greatest box office stars. Masterpieces such as The Terminator and Predator were more than successful films. They redefined the action genre itself. When Arnold appeared on screen with his icy stare and towering physique, audiences saw more than an actor. They saw a figure forged from steel, a symbol of resilience and seemingly limitless strength. The iron discipline he had developed years earlier in that old basement gym in Graz had evolved into a captivating cinematic language, a form of screen presence that commanded the admiration of audiences across the globe. Yet there was one stark truth hidden behind the dazzling success of those blockbuster films. Beneath the skin of the seemingly indestructible machine, a brutal price was quietly being paid. Those iconic roles came at an enormous personal cost. To maintain a physique far beyond natural limits, Arnold subjected his body to an unforgiving regime for decades. He had begun as a professional bodybuilder before becoming a film star, and that relentless discipline gradually turned his body into something resembling an overworked construction site. Time, the greatest adversary of every legend, eventually began sending unmistakable warning signs. When the cameras stopped rolling and the film premieres were over, Arnold was left to confront relentless joint pain, the unmistakable sound of wear and tear that no painkiller could completely silence. His spine carried the burden of countless hours spent lifting heavy weights, while his knees and shoulders, already pushed to their limits during his bodybuilding career, began demanding their own reckoning. The long list of operations, from hip and shoulder replacements to complex procedures involving his congenital heart valve, became real scars, lasting reminders of a battle he fought quietly away from the public eye. The image of the indestructible hero seen on screen was, in many ways, a comforting illusion for audiences, a powerful fantasy, while the reality behind the scenes consisted of long nights spent confronting exhaustion and physical decline. He accepted trading his long-term comfort, and even the possibility of a more carefree old age, in exchange for creating immortal heroes in the public imagination. It was more than a sacrifice of health. It was an act of profound commitment. He gave up the wholeness of his body in exchange for a place in cinematic history. Every celebrated performance and every remarkable achievement carried with it another hidden cost, serving as a reminder of the price that can accompany extraordinary ambition. Arnold Schwarzenegger's world had always been built upon the solid foundations of discipline and achievement, but in 2011, those foundations were shaken by an earthquake called the truth. For more than a decade, he had lived a double life, keeping a secret capable of destroying everything he had spent years building. His admission that he had fathered a son, Joseph, with the family's housekeeper, dealt a devastating blow not only to his political career, then at its height, but also to the trust of millions who had admired him. The revelation shattered the family life he had worked so hard to protect. His 25-year marriage to Maria Shriver, long regarded as a symbol of the union between Hollywood influence and the Kennedy family's political legacy, came to an end amid widespread public shock. The walls of the family home, once a place of security, became filled with hurt, disappointment, and unfamiliar distance between people who had once shared a close family bond. For Arnold, this was not a controversy that could simply be resolved through wealth or fame. It represented the collapse of a moral foundation that he himself had damaged. The emotional landscape of his family changed forever. His older children were forced to face the painful collapse of the idealized image they had held of their father, while relationships within the family became marked by uncertainty and lasting emotional fractures. Even so, at the darkest moment of his life, rather than choosing to run away or deny what had happened, Arnold faced the consequences head-on. He accepted responsibility, a decision that even many of his strongest critics ultimately acknowledged. He worked to repair what had been broken, committed himself to building a responsible relationship with Joseph, and continued striving to remain an active father in the lives of his other children. It was a long and difficult journey, one in which he had to confront the disappointment of those he loved most, and accept that, although he could lift thousands of pounds, he could not escape the weight of the mistakes he himself had made. Arnold's American dream did not disappear entirely, but it became permanently marked by regret and by hard-earned lessons about honesty. If Arnold Schwarzenegger is a towering mountain of strength and presence, then Maria Shriver was the quiet stream that nourished it and kept it from becoming barren. As a member of the distinguished Kennedy family, the closest thing America has to an unofficial royal dynasty, Maria brought with her a legacy of intelligence, insight, and public service. Her presence beside Arnold was more than the union of a Hollywood star and a woman of political heritage. It was a perfect balance between the brilliance of fame and the depth of character. Maria was the one person who could see beyond the rugged armor of muscle to discover a very different Arnold. A man who was often exhausted, burdened by anxiety, and driven by a longing for acceptance that even he struggled to define. Throughout the most demanding years of his Hollywood career and his high-pressure tenure as governor of California, Maria remained the family's anchor. She was not only his wife, but also a respected journalist who used empathy and wisdom to help him navigate the relentless waves of public opinion. Her sacrifices were often overshadowed by the legendary Schwarzenegger name. She carried much of the responsibility for raising their children, preserving a sense of stability and normality, while her husband was constantly surrounded by the glamour of public life. Maria patiently created a genuine home where Arnold could set aside the mask of the Terminator and simply be a husband and a father. She was the one person willing to confront the darker sides of his character, striving to reconcile the immense ego of a global icon with the realities of everyday life. Although their marriage ultimately came to an end, no one can deny that Maria Shriver became part of Arnold's soul, helping him live a more human life before personal mistakes brought down everything she had worked so hard to build. After the devastating storm of heartbreak and public scrutiny, Arnold's life gradually turned onto a quieter path, one that was both unexpected and deeply necessary. From 2013 onwards, he found a sense of emotional stability alongside Heather Milligan, a talented physical therapist. Their relationship was never loud or shaped by media attention, but instead grew through quiet understanding and mutual support. At the age of 78, Arnold is no longer chasing records or demanding film projects. The rhythm of his life has slowed considerably. His mornings begin with bicycle rides through the streets of Los Angeles, enjoying the fresh air before the city fully awakens. The muscles that once dominated cinema screens are now devoted to life's simplest pleasures, caring for his miniature horses, his donkeys, and the dogs that roam around his home. This is his world today, free from the calls of action and far removed from both the admiration and judgment of the public. With Heather by his side, Arnold has learned the art of living in harmony with himself. He no longer seeks to conquer the world through sheer determination or impose perfection on everything around him. Instead, he has embraced life's quieter moments, discovering peace in the ordinary experiences he had overlooked for decades while pursuing greatness. This is the chapter in which Arnold is truly living, rather than simply existing as a legend. He is no longer the king standing at the summit. He is a man learning to appreciate the sunset, with the same rough hands that once lifted enormous weights, now gently caring for small animals, embracing the kindness he had longed for throughout his youth, but had never allowed himself to experience. Now, at the age of 78, with the imposing image of the Terminator belonging largely to the past, Arnold faces a different kind of battle, the battle against the natural aging of his body. Congenital heart valve problems, joints that have undergone numerous operations, and increasing physical limitations have turned his body into a construction site that never truly rests. Yet the greatest change lies in his mindset. Arnold no longer trains to break world records or achieve a flawless physique for the camera. He trains to live. Every gentle workout each morning and every rehabilitation session now serves a different purpose, preserving his mobility, his independence, and his dignity. He understands that he can never return to the peak of his physical prime, but he can still choose how he grows older. It is a new kind of humility, accepting the limits of biology rather than fighting against them. Remaining useful has become the emotional medicine that keeps his mind engaged. Arnold has not chosen to disappear from public life altogether. Through his personal newsletter, podcasts discussing his philosophy of life, and his continued commitment to environmental causes, he has maintained a meaningful connection with people around the world. He has shifted from inspiring others through explosive action and destruction to inspiring them through wisdom, lessons learned from failure, and the compassion of someone who has experienced every stage of life. In his later years, Arnold is no longer simply a symbol of steel. He has become an experienced guide who understands that true strength lies in resilience of the mind rather than physical power alone. In the end, Arnold Schwarzenegger's journey is more than an epic tale of success. It is the story of a man finding his way back to himself. From the forgotten boy in the village of Thal, to the giant who conquered Hollywood, and finally to a 78-year-old man who has found a measure of inner peace, Arnold has completed the greatest circle of his life. He has learned the most difficult lesson every legend must eventually face: how to live peacefully alongside the enormous shadow cast by his own legacy. Arnold's true liberation did not come from a film award or a political office, but from making peace with the imperfections of his past. He has learned to smile at the scars on his body, to forgive the mistakes that once shattered his family, and to accept that the era of the superhero has passed, making way for the finest chapter of all, the chapter of an ordinary human being who knows how to love, how to hurt, and how to appreciate the quiet beauty of everyday life. The final message the Terminator leaves behind is no longer the threatening declaration, "I'll be back," but a profound reflection on courage. True strength, in the end, does not lie in never failing, but in having the courage to face the consequences of failure, rise from the broken pieces, and continue moving forward with a heart refined by time. Arnold Schwarzenegger is no longer an untouchable monument. He has become something even greater, a complete human being.